I bought my first pair of real work gloves when I was 24. Leather, stiff as hell, stitched like somebody meant 'em to last. I still got 'em, buried somewhere in the shed out back. I thought about those gloves last Saturday, right as I knelt beside the cracked concrete steps behind the house. My knees ain't what they used to be, but that itch, that need to fix what's mine, that don't fade. This house belonged to my Uncle Harold before me. And Harold, God rest him, was the kind of man who'd patch a roof with license plates and make it work. When he passed, he left the house to me outright. No fuss, no mortgage, just a yellow deed in a tin box and a single line scribbled in his will. Let Marcus make it his own. And I did. I painted, rewired half the place, put in new pipes when the water came out brown, replanted the flower beds with marigolds and collards, fixed every squeaky hinge and door frame till the whole place stopped groaning at me like it was haunted. But the back steps, I'd patched them twice, then left them alone. Kept telling myself I'd get to it when the weather cooled. The truth is, I was scared. Not of the work, of what lay under. The concrete was old, older than the rest of the house by a few decades easy. Didn't match Harold's style, or anyone's really. Still, Saturday morning, I got up early, kissed Clara, told her I'd be out back. Michelle was watching cartoons, loud enough I could hear the theme song through the window. The air smelled like wet grass and the old camphor tree beside the shed. I grabbed my sledgehammer and chisel. Every swing echoed through my chest. The cracks gave way easy, too easy. The concrete peeled like bark, revealing dark soil underneath. But there was something else, a thud I couldn't explain. I dug with my hands. Dirt was damp, almost clay. And then my fingers hit something smooth, synthetic. I brushed it off and stared. A black cable. Thick as 2 fingers. Not frayed, not old. Laid deliberately in a channel. I sat back on my heels, heart knocking against my ribs like it wanted out. That cable wasn't for power or plumbing. It was something else. Something that didn't belong in a backyard built by hand. I should have stopped, covered it up, pretended I never saw it. But something in me, something deep, wouldn't let me. Because when you grow up like I did, shuffled between places, told to keep quiet, keep still, be grateful, when you finally get something to call your own, you don't let it stay strange. You dig. And the cable? It didn't end there. It went deeper, straight toward the house.
That night, I couldn't sleep. Clara kept asking what was wrong, but I told her it was just work stress. I lied, not because I don't trust her, but because I didn't want to speak it out loud. Words give things power. The next morning, I got up before the sun. Didn't even make coffee. I walked out back with a flashlight, kneeling by the place I'd recovered with a tarp and 2 cinder blocks the day before. My breath hung in the cool air, foggy and fast. I pulled the tarp off and started digging again, deeper this time. Careful. That cable was solid, rubber sheath over insulated layers, thick and stiff, industrial, not something you pick up at Home Depot. The further down I went, the more I found. Not just 1 wire. 4, each running in different directions, like veins, like a map drawn underground. One curved back toward the shed, another stretched under the yard toward the fence line, one dipped toward the old camphor tree, and the thickest one ran dead on toward the house. I followed that one first. The soil was stubborn, packed hard over time. Took me nearly an hour to trace the line to the foundation. The cable disappeared into the concrete, right where the original base of the house was poured. I ran my hand along the wall, feeling where the brick met the slab. There was a patch, smoother than the rest, maybe the size of a shoebox, sealed. I went back inside, cleaned up best I could, and sat in the kitchen pretending to read the paper. But my mind kept circling. I thought back to Harold, how he never let me or my cousins play in the backyard. "You stay up front where I can see you," he'd say, standing on the porch with a glass of sweet tea and that leather belt always folded in one hand like punctuation. I remember once, maybe I was 9, I snuck around back and opened the shed. It was locked, but I jimmied it with a butter knife. Inside, I found an old workbench and metal cases, all padlocked. I remember the smell. Copper and oil and something burnt. He caught me and whooped me so hard I couldn't sit for 2 days. Told me if I went back there again, I'd regret it. I thought he was just mean. Now I'm wondering if he was scared. I waited until Clara took Michelle to her friend's birthday party that afternoon. As soon as the car pulled off, I grabbed a pair of wire cutters and went down to the basement. It took me a while to find where the cable entered, but once I did, tucked behind the old furnace where the concrete bowed just slightly, I went to work. I peeled back the insulation, slow and careful. My hands shook. Inside were bundles, red, green, white, and black wires, shielded, pristine, still active. I touched one with the back of my knuckle and flinched, not from a shock, from what it meant. This wasn't some old abandoned setup. This was live. For the first time since I moved in, I didn't feel like the owner of this house. I felt like a guest, a watched one.
The basement had always been Harold's territory. Even after I moved in, I kept my distance. Stored a few boxes down there, sure, but I never really explored. The air always felt heavier than it should have, like the walls held breath. But after I found that cable, I started seeing the whole house different. That night, I didn't eat dinner. Clara noticed, but she was too busy wrangling Michelle through her homework to press. I waited until they were asleep, then grabbed my flashlight and headed downstairs barefoot so the stairs wouldn't creak. The furnace sat like a rusted beast in the corner, growling every so often like it remembered how to be angry. Behind it, I noticed faint scratches in the concrete wall, thin, parallel lines like something had been mounted there and removed. I turned and scanned the rest of the space. A shelf lined with old paint cans, a busted radio, a stack of folded drop cloths that smelled like mildew and thyme. Nothing unusual, until I noticed the air vent in the ceiling wasn't like the others. The slats were tighter, deeper, too deep. I dragged a chair over and climbed up. The metal felt warm. When I pried it open, something clattered inside. I reached in and pulled out a small metal bracket, still screwed into the vent's interior frame. It looked like it had once held a small camera or sensor, something electronic. My stomach flipped. That's when I remembered something. One summer, I was maybe 12. Harold sent me down to the basement to fetch a wrench. I came back empty-handed, said I couldn't find it. He didn't ask what shelf I looked on. He asked what I touched. When I said nothing, he stared at me for a long time, then told me if I ever opened the vent, I'd lose a finger. It made no sense back then. Now, it makes too much. I went back upstairs and started searching room by room. Every vent cover, every outlet plate, every recessed light. In the guest room, Michelle's room before we renovated, I found a second bracket. Tiny screws still in place. A faint outline in the dust where something used to sit. I stood in the middle of the room, heart racing, eyes flicking around like they could catch ghosts. Harold hadn't just wired this house. He'd outfitted it. Not for safety, not for comfort. For control. And I'd been sleeping under his web like a man who thinks the storm passed just because the rain stopped. I sat on the edge of the bed, breathing hard, palms slick. Then I thought, the wires don't just come in, they go out. I went out back again with the flashlight, pointing it across the yard. Looked past the spot where I'd dug, past the old garden hose, toward the base of the shed. The grass there didn't grow right. Looked thin, dry, like it had been disturbed and patched over. I walked over, knelt down. The soil was softer than the rest. Something was waiting under there. Something Harold left behind.
The ground behind the shed gave way like old bread, dry on top, but once I broke through that crust of roots and weeds, it turned loamy and dark, like something had been buried there not long ago. I worked with my hands at first, then with the flathead shovel from the garage. Every few inches I hit something, not rocks, but debris, screws, plastic fragments, a busted metal hinge, like someone had once tried to cover their tracks but got sloppy. And then I heard the clang. Sharp, metallic, not the sound of a buried tool or junk, but a flat, manufactured plate. I dug around it, clearing edges, heart thudding with every shovel stroke. Took nearly an hour to reveal it all, maybe 2 feet wide with a rounded corner, bolted shut. There was a recessed handle in the middle. I pulled. Nothing. Tried again, this time wedging the shovel underneath. It groaned, but moved, just enough to release a breath of air that smelled like burnt plastic and rust. I stepped back, waited. No alarms, no sparks, just the silence of cicadas in the trees and the low whir of the street lamp flickering behind the fence. Then I lifted the hatch. Underneath was a small chamber, maybe 3 feet deep, fully enclosed, metal walls. On one side, a panel of blinking LED lights, green, blue, red, flickering in a rhythm that felt too intentional. At the bottom sat a locked steel case wired to the panel. 4 thick cables ran into it, the same ones I'd found under the steps. The thing hummed, not loud but steady. This wasn't a junk pile. It was active. And whatever it was doing, it was still doing it now. I didn't touch the wires. I didn't pull anything. I just stared, jaw tight, sweat cold along my spine. I went back inside, grabbed my toolbox, and returned with a headlamp and gloves. It took time, but I managed to loosen the bolts on the steel case and lift the lid. Inside were rows of hard drives, black, labeled, dated, some going back over 15 years. Harold's system hadn't just watched. It had recorded, stored, cataloged every conversation, every room, every moment. It was all in there. My voice, Clara's laughter, Michelle learning to walk, to read, to sing herself to sleep, captured, stored in a box beneath the grass. I staggered back, knelt in the dirt, couldn't breathe right. All this time, I thought I was preserving Harold's house, honoring what he left behind. Turns out, he never left at all. He built something to stay. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen with the hard drive on the table like it was a loaded weapon. Just stared at it. The fridge kicked on every now and then. A dog barked 2 houses over. Time moved, but I didn't. By dawn, I decided. I wasn't going to hook it up. Not yet. but I needed to know the scale. How many eyes were in this house? I started in the living room, pulled the vent cover, same tight slats I'd seen in the basement. Inside, another bracket, small, angled toward the couch. Then I checked the kitchen ceiling. The recessed light closest to the fridge had a tiny lens behind the glass, barely visible. My stomach flipped. I yanked it out with pliers. Glass shattered across the linoleum, but I didn't care. My hands shook, breath coming too fast. I moved to our bedroom, pulled the smoke detector. Behind it, another lens. The bracket was newer, not dusty. And then I stepped into Michelle's room, frozen. That nightlight by her bed, the little plastic moon that glowed purple when the lights went off. She loved it, wouldn't sleep without it. I walked over and unplugged it. Turned it over. Once. Twice. Then she looked at me. "No," she whispered. I nodded. "Yes." She dropped it like it burned. We didn't say much after that. She made coffee, hands trembling. Michelle came in asking for cereal. Clara put on cartoons and sat beside me at the table while our daughter giggled in the background. That sound used to make me feel safe. Now it made me feel watched. Every corner of this house was suspect. The hallway thermostat, the little wooden bird on the shelf, the outlet behind the TV. I spent the whole day tearing them out. Wire clippings filled an old cereal box, screws in a mason jar. But it didn't help. The more I found, the more I wondered what I'd missed. Harold didn't build this in a day, and he sure as hell didn't do it alone. This wasn't some paranoid project. It was a system. One he ran, or maybe passed off to someone else. But either way, it's been running long after he was gone.
It started with the dark sedan, parked across the street on Monday morning, windows tinted, engine idling. Stayed there 40 minutes, then pulled off slow. No plates I recognized. Tuesday, it was back. Different spot. Around the corner, just far enough to seem like coincidence. Wednesday, I stood on the porch, sipping coffee I didn't want, staring straight at it. Driver didn't move, didn't flinch. Just sat there. That same day, a man I'd never seen before showed up at the barber shop while I was getting my fade touched up. Didn't speak to nobody, didn't sit, just leaned against the wall for 10 minutes, watching. When I looked back again, he was gone. At first, I thought maybe I was seeing ghosts, paranoia from the system, the cameras, the wires. But it wasn't just me. Clara came home Thursday and asked why a man was standing by the mailbox when she pulled into the driveway. Said he didn't speak, just looked at her, then walked off. That night, I checked every door twice, made sure the windows were locked. We didn't speak much. Michelle picked up on it. Kids always do. She asked if we were mad at her. We told her no. Told her everything was fine. Lie. Again. By Friday, I stopped going to work, called out with a fake cough, and sat in the garage, door half closed, watching. The street was too quiet. The hum of traffic muted. Everything felt off-axis. I opened one of the hard drives. Couldn't help it. Hooked it up to the old laptop I kept for car diagnostics. It whirred to life instantly. Organized folders by date, time, room. There were hundreds of files, maybe thousands. I clicked one. Video. grainy black and white. It was me, standing in the hallway, talking to Clara. No sound. Another file. Michelle at the dining table, drawing. Another. Clara folding laundry in the bedroom. The most recent one? From 2 days ago. It showed me sitting at the kitchen table, hard drive in front of me. Watching myself, watching. I yanked the cord, heart thundering in my chest. This wasn't just legacy, it was active surveillance, which meant someone else right now still had access. I slammed the laptop shut and wrapped the drive in 2 towels, stuffed it into the crawl space behind the water heater. Clara found me minutes later, white-knuckled and sweating. "You're not telling me everything," she said. I shook my head. "I can't." She stepped forward, voice sharp now. "No, you won't." I didn't speak. She shoved something into my chest, Michelle's nightlight. "You fix this," she said, voice breaking. "You fix it now."
I told her everything that night. Sat across from Clara at the dining table, hard drive between us like a confession. Michelle was upstairs, asleep. At least I hoped she was. I started from the beginning. The cracked concrete step, the cable, the buried box, the cameras in every room. I told her about Harold, the vent brackets, the nightlight, the files, the video of us in our house, living like we were alone. She didn't interrupt, didn't cry. She just stared at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. When I finished, she sat back and let out a breath like she'd been holding it for years. "How long?" she asked. "I don't know." "You think Harold set this up?" "Yes, and someone else kept it going after." Her jaw tightened. "So we've been watched. In our bedroom, our bathroom, our child's room. And you, what, you just kept it quiet?" "I didn't want to scare you. I didn't know what to do." Her voice cracked on the next line. "You were supposed to protect us, Marcus." That landed harder than anything else. Because I did everything I could to build safety, stability. I gave up better jobs to stay close to home, fixed the roof myself to save money, took Michelle to every doctor visit, every parent-teacher conference. I thought I was protecting us, but I didn't see what was beneath us, what was inside the house. She stood. "I want to leave." "I understand." She looked at me for a long time. "But we don't have anywhere to go," she said finally. And that was the truth that broke us. This was supposed to be our inheritance. Now it felt like a curse. We argued, quiet but brutal. Not about love, about trust. About what was still real. At one point, I raised my voice and Michelle came downstairs, rubbing her eyes. "Mama?" Clara dropped to her knees and held her so tight Michelle squealed. Then she looked at me over our daughter's shoulder. "We're calling the police." I hesitated. Then I nodded. The officers came the next morning. 2 cruisers, 1 unmarked SUV. I walked them around the property, showed them the hatch, the chamber, the drives, led them inside, pointed out the vents, the ceiling lights, the fake nightlight. They were quiet at first. Then one of them, the younger one with wire-rimmed glasses, shook his head, and muttered, "This is more sophisticated than anything I have ever seen." The older one didn't say much, just looked at me like I'd stepped into something I couldn't scrub off. Like maybe I never could.
They came back with more trucks the next day. Marked evidence vans, a few plain sedans. Neighbors stood in their yards pretending to water flowers while the police rolled orange tape across my fence line. The cicadas were loud, the air heavy and sweet with cut grass and diesel. Clara sat on the porch swing with Michelle in her lap, both of them quiet, eyes following every move. I stayed by the back door, arms crossed, watching strangers dismantle the only place I'd ever called mine. The officers went room to room, pulling out vent covers, cutting wires, bagging drives. They unscrewed the recessed lights, pried up floorboards, cataloged every bracket. Out back, a crew unbolted the hatch and lifted out the steel case with the care of bomb techs. One detective came over to me, tall, pale, freckles like ash across his face. "The system was advanced," he said, eyes scanning his notes. "Deliberate and old. We're still tracing where it fed." "Who built it?" I asked. He hesitated. "We don't know yet. Could be private security, could be something else. Your uncle's name doesn't show up on any contracts." I laughed, short and bitter. Harold didn't believe in contracts. They kept working. For hours. Every screw, every piece of hidden metal left a scar behind. A hole in the wall, a square of discolored paint, a gouge in the wood. By the time the sun dipped behind the tree line, my house looked like a body opened on an autopsy table. Clara wouldn't come inside. Michelle kept whispering she wanted to go home, not understanding we were still in it. When the last van left, the rooms were quiet. Too quiet. No hum, no blinking lights, just dust motes hanging in the evening sun. I walked through, touching door frames, running my hand along the walls, like maybe I could feel what they remembered. I thought about Harold, about how he used to say, "Keep your eyes open, nephew." I thought I had. Clara came in behind me. "I can't stay here," she said softly. "Not after this." I turned. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "I don't know if I can leave," I said. She looked around the gutted room. "Marcus, it was never really ours." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Ownership had always been my anchor, proof I'd made it, that the boys shuffled from house to house had finally built a home. But what Harold left wasn't a gift. It was a wound, hidden under concrete and drywall. And now the wound was open, raw, exposed to everyone on the street. Clara walked out. I stayed a while longer. In the stillness, I could almost hear the cables humming again, could almost feel eyes where none remained. I knew those drives didn't end here. Somewhere a copy existed. Somewhere memory still lived on. Somewhere it might still be watching.